So many of you who have been around for a while know that I used to run a lot of marathons, and I still enjoy running when my body allows me to and when my schedule allows me to. But I've had the distinct privilege over the years not to be hit by a car once, but to be hit by a car twice when I run. Obviously, I've lived to tell about it. Now, one of them is going to be on a street that you're all familiar with. It's at 187th and F Street. This happened early one Thursday morning, about 6:15 or so. It was kind of dark. I was headed out west, like toward 204th Street. I always run facing traffic so they can, see me coming. Now, this guy was traveling northbound on 187th Street. He was going to make a right-hand turn onto F Street. So as he was coming through and he was going fast, he wasn't like looking my way. He was actually just looking the other way to see if there was any traffic coming in. He was just going to, roll through the stop sign and turn onto F Street. I saw some lights coming, but, I just figured, okay, there's a stop sign. People usually stop. I'll kind of keep my eye out. And he just rolled through that thing, got into the intersection, and there I was. I actually had to jump up on his car. I landed on the hood. I rolled off the hood. Thankfully, I scraped my elbow and my knee a little bit, but I was all right. But emotionally, I wasn't terribly thrilled at that point. I wouldn't say that joyful and content were words that would really describe who I was. The guy got out of the car and he seemed pretty apologetic. He said, hey man, I didn't mean to do this. I didn't, go away. And I was like, that whole felony hit and run thing may have something to do with it as well. But so some of you probably wouldn't have been terribly proud with what happened in the next 30 seconds. Some of you may have been really proud of what happened in the next 30 seconds. But I had mentioned that there's a stop sign. He's got this brake pedal. He needs to use that when he sees that, and he needs to watch out for pedestrians. And so I ran home and actually finished the run, ran home, and you think about that, like I was angry, like I was just mad, like he should have stopped, and I had the right of way, and the rest of the day didn't go terribly well. Looking back, I should have been grateful. Who gets hit by a car and just gets a little scrape on their elbow or a little scrape on their knee or something like that? And anger is going to come into your life. Anger is going to come into your life on a regular basis, and we really get to, make the choice. Are we going to let anger ruin our day and probably somebody else's day as well, or are we going to, reply with grace and dignity and compassion? Now, you need to know something. You're going to get hit by a car or something fairly similar. It is just going to happen. Somebody is going to say something to you that frustrates you or annoys you or makes you angry. Someone's going to do something to you. You're going to actually just see things, and you're going to see things that aren't fair, and it's going to make you angry. I know for me as a parent, one of the things that can really make me angry is like when I feel that my kids aren't being treated fairly. And many of us, we deal with that as well. Sometimes there's going to be things that don't go our way. Now, I actually came up with a list of the top 5 or 6 things that can just make me really angry really quickly. One of them is someone who cuts in line. So if you're a line cutter, that's something that really gets to me. People who don't listen. So I'm looking at y'all right now. I can tell who's listening and who's not. And the 3 of you who aren't listening, I'm really mad right now. So pay attention. Companies that make you like scroll through like dozens of options before you can actually talk to a live person who can connect you with someone that can actually help you. That makes me angry. My new thing is people who put hashtags in front of everything. I don't know, it just makes me angry, so don't put hashtags in front of things. Now, basically, we're going to become angry when our expectations aren't met. We're going to be disappointed, or we're going to be angry when our expectations aren't met. So, think about this, like anger is a natural emotion. You just can't avoid it. It is going to happen. So let's say that you just lock yourself down in your basement and cut yourself off from the rest of the world. So people couldn't. Guess what? You're still going to get angry. You're going to get angry at yourself because you're not living out the purpose that God has created you to live. It's going to be impossible not to. Let's take a little poll here. Who in this room has ever been angry before? Okay, so this is a natural emotion. It's something that is going to happen. So help me out. Say this with me. I will get angry. Okay, do you believe that? You will get angry. So, okay, we believe this. Now, what we're going to look at is not how to avoid anger. We're going to look at how to deal with anger. when it comes our way. Now, anger is going to happen in a couple different ways. One of the ways, some of us get angry with God. You've probably been there before, haven't you? Something really bad just happened and it didn't make sense, and trust me, God has dealt with people's anger before. You're not the first or the last person that's going to get angry with God. That's one way that we can get angry. We're going to get angry with other people. And one of the things we're going to look at later in the message is we're actually going to get angry with ourselves as well. Just like other people make mistakes and it makes us angry, we make mistakes. And we get angry with ourselves. Now, different types of anger exist. I'm going to give us a little history lesson here. Martin Luther saw the Catholic Church is becoming very corrupt. This is back 500 years ago. They were actually like selling indulgences so people could get the forgiveness of sin. Now, as far as church fundraisers go, this is a pretty creative one. It's not terribly theological or biblical. So Martin Luther, he got angry with this. He says, the church should not be in the business of selling forgiveness. This is something that only God can give. So Martin Luther, he got angry. And you know what he did? He wrote the 95 Theses, and he posted them on the front doors of the Castle Church in Wittenberg. And there started the Protestant Reformation. Sometimes anger can lead to wonderful things. Corrie ten Boom, she was a Dutch woman who was born in the late part of the 1800s. She got really angry during World War II. The Jewish people were being enslaved because of the because of the color of their skin. So her and her dad, they helped these Jewish people escape. The Germans found out about it. They threw her in prison. And it was this anger that caused one of the most beautiful books ever to be written. She wrote this book called The Hiding Place. And this book was birthed through her anger. In the United States, in the 1960s, there was a man named Martin Luther King Jr. He got angry that there's a document called the Constitution, or the Declaration of Independence, that says that all men are created equal. Yet he observed that all men weren't being treated equally. So his anger led him to say these words, that I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out of the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. And this man's anger changed a nation. It inspired a generation. Sometimes we're going to see things that make us angry. And when that happens, God is nudging us. God is leading us. God is calling us to do something about it. There was another man who got angry. He got angry many times. He was Armenian. His name was Jesus of Nazareth. One of the times he got angry, he actually walked into a temple. He's expecting to see the house of God, and that's not what he saw. He saw these lottery competitions going on over here, and he saw the money changers here that were doing some loan sharking. He saw other people selling doves, and he got angry. What Jesus did is he actually picked up some of these tables and he overthrew them. And he says, this is not what you do in my Father's house. My Father's house is a house of prayer. So in this case, Jesus used his anger to do something. Now, we have to know that a constructive response to righteous anger is good because it motivates us to do what is right. So when we see the person being imprisoned, when we see the person not being treated fairly, when we see corruption, we do something about it. Now, I'll also say that a destructive response to personal anger is bad because it causes us to do what is wrong. So anger is a natural emotion, and it can be a great emotion. But when anger comes personal for us and we start doing what's wrong, then it becomes a bad thing. Now, Jesus says this. He says in Matthew chapter 5, verse 21, you have heard it said that our ancestors were told you must not murder. If you commit murder, you're subject to judgment. But I say, if you are angry with someone, you are subject to judgment. If you call someone an idiot, you are in danger of being brought before the court. And if you curse someone, you are in danger of the fires of hell. Now, we know that at this point in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is actually using hyperbole. If you just keep reading this text, the next text, Jesus says something like, okay, if your right hand causes you to sin, you chop it off. If your eye causes you to sin, you take it out. Now, we know that Jesus is using exaggeration for effect here. But we also know that there's this great truth embedded in this hyperbole that Jesus is using. And that truth is going to be this, that destructive personal anger is going to separate us. It will simply separate us from God, it will separate us from others, and it will separate us from the true person that God is intending for us to be. So let me give you an example. Let's just say you're driving home from work. Let's say you get off work at like 5 o'clock. Now, living in Omaha, we have a lot of roads here that like at the stoplight, there are 2 lanes. Then like about 200 yards later, they become 1 lane. Like, you all know what I'm talking about? So you're on one of those, and you're wanting to get home, and it's been a long day, and all of a sudden, like, you're fourth in line. Like, these other 2 cars, like, pull up in front of all these cars, and they get in front of you, and, like, there's this little race that's going on. These 2 people just get right in front of you, and you have just lost 3 seconds of your life because these other people have cut in front of you, and you're just furious. Then you remember that your spouse and your kids are out doing something, and they're not going to be home, and you're hungry, so you go through the drive-thru at Runza. On the 8th day, God created Runza. And you order God's preferred meal of a mushroom Swiss Runza with French fries. That's what you order because that's what Christians order. And now you get it, and you can smell it, and you take the thing home, and you open up that the Runza's in there, and it's got that cheese just melting down off the side. And I can see some of you have just changed your lunch plans, and you're going to Runza. But they didn't give you French fries; they gave you onion rings. And you're just furious. I mean, you want those fries, and the world is just against you. And you're going to have to sacrifice by eating these onion rings when you should have had French fries. And you want to unwind a little bit, so you're going to watch one of your 12 ESPN network versions or whatever it is, and your cable TV is out. And at this point, you're just ready to blow a fuse. So now you got a problem, don't you? You're angry. Like, the anger is life is not treated you. You've lost 3 seconds of your life. You had to eat onion rings, and you can't watch ESPN. I mean, the world is against you at this point. And now you got your spouse and your kids that are coming home, and you got a choice. Are you going to take this anger out on them? Are they going to be against you as well, just because they're part of the world and everybody's against you? Or is there some way we can actually put this anger beside and realize that maybe one of these people that cut in front of me was trying to get to the daycare before it closed, and I'm happy to let him in. Or maybe this 17-year-old that started working runs was doing the absolute best they could, and they were just trying to keep up with all the people in line with you. And maybe there's some kind of power outage somewhere along the line. Your ESPN's going to be back in 25 minutes. Or are we just going to continue that anger and take it out on the people that we love the most? Now, when anger gets the best of us, here's what's going to happen. Okay, anger is going to happen in our life. When anger gets the best of us, here's what happens. All of a sudden, we become separated from God. Now, when's the last time you've been totally angry and totally intimate with God? It's very tough to do both those things at the same time. When's the last time you've just let anger get the best of you, and you can actually say, well, yeah, this has helped my interpersonal relationships. And really, the biggest victim to our anger is ourself. We're going to look at that in a little bit, but you need to know when you get angry, it's a feast that you're having, and the skeleton that you're feasting on is your own. Now, we're going to look at 3 prayers that we can pray to help us out with anger. Prayer number 1 is, Lord, help me do something about the things you want me to be angry about. Lord, help me do something about the things that you want me to be angry about. Okay, so some anger is good. Sometimes God gives us an anger so that we do something about it. Think Martin Luther King. Think Martin Luther. Think Corrie ten Boom. Think Jesus. Now, Amos, he's one of the authors of the Old Testament. He was a prophet. Amos, if you could describe him in one word, it would be angry. Amos was just an angry guy. But Amos had very good reasons for his anger. He saw that the farmers were bringing their grain into what was probably like a modern-day equivalent of a co-op. And they were using scales that just weren't accurate to try to extract all the grain that they could from these farmers without paying them what was fair. Amos saw people placing things in other people before they would place God, and this frustrated him. And listen to the words that he writes in Amos chapter 5, verse 24. He says, "But let justice roll down like waters, and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Amos said that this anger I have, it's got to produce justice, and it's got to produce righteousness. Now, I want you to just think about this for a little bit. I hope that some of you this morning think about something that you're angry about. And I hope that God really leads you to do something about it. Maybe like there's a kid down the street from you, and this kid's parent is doing the absolute best that he or she can to raise this kid. This kid, he's doing the best he can to, fill in the gap when his mom or his dad's not around. And it makes you angry that this kid doesn't have everything that he needs in life to succeed. And I really hope that, if that kid exists in your life or if that person exists in your life, that you'll do something about it. Because I believe if God has given you an anger about something, something just like this, something fair like this, something righteous like this, that you also have to know that God will give you the resources and the courage to do something about it. Now, maybe like you're in a relationship, like you could be married, it could be a kid, it could be a friend, and you're just not experiencing like the joy and contentment and the fulfillment that you want out of this relationship, and it makes you angry. So maybe all of a sudden then you say, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my part. I'm going to do the absolute best that I can on my part to make this relationship all that it can be. I'm going to listen like I've never listened before. I'm going to serve this person and love this person, even though I don't feel that they're serving me and loving me like they should. Maybe what we do is we sit down and have a tough conversation with the person, and we say something like, I love you, but I just want you to know that I just don't think that we're living out the potential of this relationship that we should be in. I want you to know that I'm going to do my part, but I want to talk about maybe some ways that we can move forward. Maybe anger does something like that and it makes a relationship better. Now, next week when we serve, this is one of the things I really hope. There's many reasons we do this, but one of the reasons we do this is so many of us are exposed to things that make us angry. I really hope that maybe someone goes down to Together Omaha, if that's where you're going, and you learn that there's actually hungry people in Omaha. You learn that there's kids in Omaha that don't have proper clothes to go to school, and this makes you so angry that you can't not do anything about it. I know when my grandpa Adolf was in a nursing home, I'd go visit him. I was a pastor about 30 miles away from where he lived at the time, and I would go to the nursing home, and I'd try to see him a couple times a week. And I'd walk through this nursing home, and I would get angry. I would get angry that all these people were just sitting there by themselves with nobody to love them. The workers were doing the absolute best that they could. But I would get angry that on most days, most of these people didn't get any visitors. I remember when we moved here, that anger led me to do something about it. Me and Benjamin over there, remember we used to go to that nursing home once a month. We had a worship service, and the highlight of the visit was not me talking to them, was not me breaking the bread and serving them communion. That was not the highlight. The highlight came after the worship service when Benjamin, he's this little 7, 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old kid, and they would wait in line for him to push them to their room or to the cafeteria. They didn't have to say it, but you could see what was going on when Benjamin was pushing those people. It's like, hey, look at me. I got this kid pushing me, and you don't have one, And I really hope that, you just see things. I hope you see things that make you angry. And I hope that your anger causes you to do something about it, because we live in a broken and a needy world. And in this broken and this needy world needs the church to step up and to be the church. And if God has given us righteous anger about something, there's a pretty good chance. If God has given us righteous anger about something, there's a pretty good chance that God is leading us to do something about the very thing that makes us angry. Now, prayer number 2 is, Lord, help me not to overreact when my expectations are not met. Lord, help me not to overreact when my expectations are not met. All right, another quick poll. Anybody in here ever overreacted before? Just get your hand up there pretty high. So we've done that, and How did that work out for you? Did it work out pretty well? You were happy about your overreaction? And I'm sure the other person that you overreacted to, I bet you they just loved that, didn't they? And yeah, it doesn't work out that way. Let's know what the psalmist says. And this is really interesting. This is not a problem in Nebraska in 2014, like that's unique to us. I mean, the guy who wrote the Psalms wrote Psalm chapter 38, verse 7, and this is like thousands of years ago. I mean, anger has been around that long and even longer. And he says, I love this translation. He just says, stop being angry. Stop being angry. Turn away from your rage. Do not lose your temper. It only leads to harm. Now, you don't even have to be a Christian to believe that that's true. I mean, that stuff is gold right there. You know, stop being angry. Turn away from rage, because it only leads to harm. Yeah, we see these little things that annoy us. Like, this is really interesting. I was on 187th Street a few years later. I was actually visiting a family that lived closer to Q Street. Now, I had never driven all the way through on 187th Street before, because like the last half, it's kind of like these great big lots where there's like 3 or 4 houses on each side, and you know, I'd never had any reason to drive down that road before, but I found myself driving down the very road that the guy who hit me was driving. Now, I wasn't even thinking about this at the time. So I'm driving down 187th Street. I'm going to turn right on F Street, just like the guy that I collided with did. So the stop sign's back here. There's kind of like some trees that are out here, and you can't really see the road from where the stop sign was. So what I did is the exact same thing that this guy did. I went through the stop sign. I went all the way out to F Street, and I looked this way to see if anybody was coming. Now, my heart, I said, this is crazy. Like, if there was a runner coming down this hill, crossing this intersection, there's no way that I would have ever seen him. You know, I was so mad at this guy for being imperfect and not yielding to a runner when I just did the exact same thing that he did. And if there was a runner running down that hill, we would have had a collision. There's no way to avoid it at that intersection. Now, I'll say this, like, anger, it's ruined a lot of relationships. It just has. And for relationships to continue despite anger, I would argue that those relationships aren't living up to the potential that exists. Now, we have imperfections, and other people have imperfections as well. Now, let's try to do this week, all right? Let's try to cut people the same slack that we hope that they cut us. Let's realize that, you know, they're imperfect and we're imperfect and we're going to make mistakes. And when the natural emotion of anger happens, this is where the gospel can intersect life. In just a few moments, I'm going to take the bread and I'm going to say, this is my body that is given for you. When you eat of this, do so in remembrance of me. Let's remember how Jesus replied to all those people who made him angry. It's with grace, it's with love, it's with dignity. Yeah, I think when we can start doing this, you know, our lives and the lives of the people around us are going to be totally changed. You know, that's prayer number 2. Now, prayer number 3, the final one, is going to be, Lord, help me get over any anger that I have toward myself. Now, at this point, we've talked about mostly anger toward other people. Now, I don't think we can leave it at that, though, because I think that for a lot of us, the biggest anger issue that we have is not toward other people, it's toward ourselves. You know, it's about the mistakes that we've made, about things that we wish that we could have done differently. Now, Paul in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 26, this is a really rich verse. He says, and don't sin by letting anger control you. So Paul's aware that anger happens. I mean, Paul was an angry person. You know, he had a lot of anger issues that he had to deal with. And he says, but don't sin by letting anger control you. Now, he says, anger is going to come into your life, but don't let this anger cause you to sin. And then this verse is great here. He concludes verse 26, and he says, don't let the sun go down while you're still angry. Now, this actually applies great to relationships with other people. Don't go to bed mad. You know, if you got a difference with your teenager, work it out, then go to bed. And if you got a difference with your spouse, work it out, then go to bed. You know, if you got a difference with a friend, you call them up on the phone, you work it out, then you go to bed. Now, I would also say, though, let's look at anger toward ourselves. Paul says, don't let the sun go down while you're still angry. So I remember this was about 10, 11 years ago. I was having lunch with a guy, and I didn't really know him terribly well. He's in my church. We met at a restaurant. He comes, and he's wearing a suit, looked great, probably mid-40s, late 40s, early 50s maybe. We just kind of did some small talk. I'm trying to figure out why we're having lunch. And he told me he's a salesman. He loves to sell things. He's sold different things throughout his life, and he loves to sell things. And I'm trying to think, okay, what's he going to sell me? And then all of a sudden, there's this pause. The small talk was done, and he looked at me, and here was the reason why we were having lunch. He said something to me that I've never heard anybody say before or since then. He just looked at me and he says, "Craig, I'm running out of dreams." Can you imagine that? You're running out of dreams. And I just said, tell me a little bit about that. And he said he had 2 kids. One was probably going to be a sophomore in college, and I actually knew this girl in high school. She was junior, senior, that age. And he says, these kids, they call me up. They call me up when they need money. That's when I get to talk to them. When they need some money for some clothes or to go out on a date or to pay the tuition, they call me up. I got this ex-wife. She hates me. I look in the mirror and I just see that I've totally let myself go. I had all these things that I wish would have happened and they didn't happen. And I had all these things that I wish wouldn't have happened and they did happen. And I'm running out of dreams, Craig. And then I said, so what do you think about at night? What do you dream about? He said, I don't dream. I live in the past. I just think if I wouldn't have done this, then maybe I'd still be married. And maybe if I was still married, then maybe my relationship with my kids would be better. And if that would have happened, then I wouldn't have let myself go like I have. And here again, we have the gospel intersecting life when it comes to anger, because every minute we're consumed by anger. We lose a minute of joy and contentment. Now, I said to this guy, and I'll say to all of us, that God has forgiven us of our past. And like I said, we can take the bread and remember how Jesus responded to anger. We can also take the cup and remember that we are forgiven. This man, I told him, I said, you can't change your past. You can't do it. If you can do it, you're going to be the first person ever to figure out how to do it. You can't change your past, but as of today, as of right now, at this lunch, you can choose to make a new beginning. You got to stop this anger toward yourself. If you don't love yourself, no one else is going to. But you have to know that God loves you, and why don't you just accept that and embrace it and accept that forgiveness, and then just think about the meal. Then Jesus, here at the meal, Jesus, he had every right to be angry. He knew what was in front of him. He was going to be put to death for something that he didn't do. Now, if anyone ever had a right to be angry, it was him. Peter was going to deny Jesus 3 times. Judas was going to betray him. Jesus, he looked at Peter, he looked at Judas, and he looked at the other 10, and he says, "Friends, this is my body that is given for you. When you eat of this, do so in remembrance of me." And likewise, Jesus took the wine, he blessed it, he gave thanks, and he said, "Friends, this is my blood. It's the blood of the new covenant that has been poured out for you in the forgiveness of your sins. When you drink of this, do so in remembrance of me." I would say that, if you've come here this morning and you're just dealing with a lot of anger toward yourself, you can't change the past, but you can create a new beginning, and God can do that with you and in you and through you. God is offering us this forgiveness, and I just pray for all of us that are offered this grace this morning that we can accept it.